We all have our secrets. But when Gwen Ferris died, her prominent Portadown home offered up images which would shock an entire community.
She always was very interested in animals from she was about 4-year-old. They went to all the shows and gymkhanas. And then as my father got older and she got older, she transferred her affection to dogs.
Gwen never married. Her collection of pedigreed dogs became her life.
Her main interest was in Pomeranians, and she was the first person to win Crufts with a black Pomeranian. Gwen's dogs were her children. She neglected her own health. On occasions I spoke to her about this neglect, but she always said her dogs came first.
But as Gwen grew older, she struggled to cope, and in February last year, she passed away.
To find your sister lying dead in the hallway in very poor conditions, and then to find, shall we say, the squalor that she'd been living in, it was very difficult to accept.
The house was in such disarray that a team of cleaners was employed to clear Gwen's home.
It was as if one was on the set of a horror movie, as opposed to real life in a high street of an everyday town. I couldn't quite believe that what I was seeing was actually in front of me. Skeletons and carcasses of some 40 animals. It was such a surreal situation.
Gwen's dogs were to keep her company in death as they did in life. In every room of the 6-bedroom house were the decomposing bodies of up to 50 of her beloved dogs.
There was a crunchy feeling under my feet as I walked about one area. And on examining what this crunchiness was, I found it was the pupa cases of thousands, if not millions, of flies. I had this vision of the whole floor heaving with maggots.
You first seen the house, it was disgusting, but in the back of the house, it was cages and just a lot of animals and carcasses and bones. It was almost like an indoor zoo.
One of them I remember particularly was a dog that had been left in a wire cage, and there was food and drink just outside the cage, and it had forced itself through the cage, almost decapitating itself in its effort to get at this food.
It seems Gwen couldn't bear to part with her dogs, even after their death.
It was fascinating to open wardrobes, for example, to see what was inside and find these beautifully fitted wardrobes full of beautiful things, some of which had never been unwrapped. And then amongst these would be the carcass of a dog that had been wrapped up beautifully in a nice, neat little parcel. So it was just surreal.
But the clean-up team soon discovered that Gwen's love of animals went far beyond pedigree dogs.
One of our team came into a room and found a skeletonized remains of something that was much, much larger than a dog. And as it transpired, it was actually a horse that had died, fallen down where it had died and basically decayed into, a leathery mass of bones on the floor.
Delaney was, in fact, a Shetland pony, and he'd been dead for more than 10 years.
I was really quite shocked when I saw the conditions that she had been living in.
When Harry visited his sister, it was by appointment only, and even then he was restricted to a single room.
In retrospect, there was nothing else that I could have done. I did as much as I was allowed to do.
And it's this room which offered the final twist to Gwen's story.
It was almost like stumbling across an Aladdin's cave in the house. It was just something you wouldn't expect. It was almost as if you should take your shoes off, you coming into this one room. It was just unbelievable,
The sitting room was pristine. In every corner, valuable antiques, from Regency furniture to an important collection of Meissen porcelain.
It started off as our drawing room, where my mother had collected quite a few antiques, and these had been added to many times over.
I would imagine what went through the auction room was in excess of £500,000, but one has the feeling that there were other pieces that didn't go through the auction room, that might have been well in excess of that figure again.
People who didn't know her probably thought she had very little money.
In accordance with Gwen's will, part of her collection was sold at auction, most of the money going to animal welfare charities.
She was born in that house, as was I, and she always said she'd be carried out of that house, as she was.